nataka niweke na energy. Naitwa Mihayo Kallaye. Mimi ni msanii wa sanaa ya uboni. Sanaa zangu nazifanyia sana hapa Tanzania na sehemu mbalimbali, siku zinazunguka kidogo. Dinembo ni mradi wa tattoo. Ni mradi ambao unalenga kuanzisha mazungumzo juu ya urejeshaji wa tamaduni za Kiafrika na namna gani tunaweza tukatumia historia kama chombo muhimu cha kurejesha tamaduni hizo. Na kikubwa katika Dinembo ni kwamba inatumia sanaa ya michoro ya mwilini na inajaribu kurudi nyuma kuangalia Waafrika zamani kwenye masuala ya sanaa za mwilini walikuwa wakifanya nini na kwa sababu gani na kwa nini walikuwa wakifanya vile. Na mradi wa Dinembo ulikuwa unahusisha kuwaweka wasanii watatu pamoja ili kuweza kuzirudia hizo historia na kujadiliana kwa pamoja ili kuangalia kwa sasa hivi namna gani tunaweza kuja na aina zetu za sanaa za mwilini ambazo zinaweza kuanzisha mijadala ya kurejeleza utamaduni, hasa zile imani za Kiafrika, lakini pia namna gani inaweza kusaidia katika kujikomboa kama Waafrika kutoka kwenye utumwa wa kifikra na wanyanja mbalimbali. When I came across the idea of restitution, it was more about the object that were looked from Africa during the colonial time. The conversation was very confined to few group of people in the community. It's mostly the academicians and few artists who got privileged to come across this terminology of this idea. And for me, it was a bit problematic when I kept listening to it. The arguments were more of like, if we bring back those objects to Africa, we don't have the right structures or infrastructure to keep those objects. And for me, I think that itself is a very colonial way of thinking and doesn't really support the idea of restitution. First of all, those objects were not meant to be in a museum. And those objects were sacred objects. They were not art. It's until, for me, it's the terror of colonialism to just go somewhere and change a very important sacred object to another function, like it's an art. It can stay in a museum. But prior, it was not meant to stay in a museum. It was meant to be with the community. What's important is not only the object, it's the knowledge around that object. Because if today we bring that object to us, it becomes numb because we don't know how to work around it. So the most important thing to do, if we really want this restitution, first of all, is to open up the conversation to everybody. Secondly, it's not about the object. It's about those knowledge, the ideas, the practices. I believe if we talk in a very collective way, there are some people still having those ideas, those knowledge, those practices. But because we don't talk, there's a big possibility of them dying with those knowledge. When we come to the spirituality part, Africa, we failed to become free because we have been disturbed from the core, from our roots. And that's our spirits, our soul, and how we believe. We have been dehumanized to a point that whatever is African sounds devil, sounds dark, as the idea of dark, which I think if we want to start decolonizing ourselves, we should start seeing the spiritual part. How do we start changing the way we see spirituality?
Thank you for the land we get to plant our wildest dreams on. Please accept the gifts as a symbol of gratitude.
The biggest inspiration for me is my own life. Like, for instance, now you see the work I'm doing is because I'm going through a stage of my life to try to reconnect myself, try to find myself, because I already felt that I'm lost. this is for most Black people, like there's this colonial expectation that you cannot neglect, because for so long in your life you've been shaped to see life in that way. And then now you start realizing, you're trying to go back, you have this realization which is very beautiful, which is very strong and powerful. When you feel it, you're like, oh, okay, this is me. I'm trying to find myself and ground myself as an African. And through my art, it's the point that I share to the public, the questions. Most of them is the questions that I come across. I find like materiality is very strong, especially when it comes to ways of seeing. Because if you have a pumpkin, you look at the pumpkin, you hold it in your hand, it's a fruit, right? But the same thing with kibuyu, it's a fruit, but when you hold it today, in the public, people don't see a fruit. They see a spiritual object that's already framed in this dark, evil narrative. How do we get to talk about this? How do we reach to a point that a black cat is related with evil spiritual energies? How did we reach there? As an artist, I can use any medium. To free yourself from the idea of having a style in media, it makes you more free. From the academic expectation, I'm a bad writer, like poor. But maybe that's the way that I present my true self, my true voice. So that's why I try to play with words. One of the biggest inspiration is my brother Yonamin. He's an Angolan. He also got the same inspiration from his mentor, Paul Capella. And I also saw it when I was researching or reading about Basquiat. It has been there, this element of writing. And I find it very powerful, especially for me, it's my weakest point. And then I'm trying also to navigate, is it really the weakest point, or is it because of the expectation? That's why I'm being framed to think that this is the weakest point. The history part is also very important stuff, because as Africans, the history has been misrepresented. I'm not sure if we really know our history.